corporate manslaughter, if you remember, the new legislation came into effect in April of this year. It was something which was heralded, I think, right back in the 1997 Labour Manifesto. It was something that they said would happen, and came on the back of a number of large-scale tragedies. In fact, this week is the 20th anniversary of the Piper Alpha disaster, if you remember, on the oil rig in the North Sea. A series of disasters, the rail crashes, the Piper Alphas, the Herald of Free Enterprise incidents, and a large amount of outcry in various sectors that the law was inadequate to be dealing with these sorts of incidents. That there were certain things that could be done under the health and safety legislation, but in terms of manslaughter legislation, in terms of the existing common offence of manslaughter, that was inadequate to deal with those sorts of cases. So that's the background to the legislation coming in. So I'll say something very briefly about the state of the law before. As I say, there always has been an offence of manslaughter for which a council, a company, an organisation could be prosecuted. But it has been a very difficult road for any prosecution to follow, primarily because of this principle, what's called the identification principle, that a successful prosecution could only be brought of these organisations if you could point to a single senior individual said to embody the organisation as its controlling mind. And yes, that may be quite possible if you're looking at a company with 2 or 3 directors. But if you're looking at something like Balfour Beatty or P&O, almost impossible to come up with somebody who you could put in the dock quite literally as the controlling mind of the company. And it is for that reason that those prosecutions of larger organisations, large companies, for manslaughter in the past have failed. And I've given a couple of examples there. The Hatfield rail crash, where the prosecution for manslaughter was started against Balfour Beatty, but was thrown out at a fairly early stage. And also the personal case of Barrow Borough Council, which I'll talk about a bit more later, the Legionnaire's disease case, where certainly at some time they were looking at corporate manslaughter charges against the council as well as health and safety offences. As I say, where successful cases have been brought in the past, they've tended to be against very small companies where you can effectively identify one individual with that organisation. And if you remember the canoeing disaster, the teenagers who drowned on canoeing in the sea off Lyme Regis, many years back now, I think. But that was one of the handful of examples of successful prosecutions. So that's the background to why the legislation was brought in. As I say, the Act coming into force in April of this year. I had a trail around on the net earlier this week to see if I could find any charges which have yet been brought under the new legislation, and searched in vain. So obviously much trumpeting when the legislation came in, but we're yet to see the fruits of it coming in reality. New offence of corporate manslaughter created in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. There's a similar offence, corporate homicide, north of the border up in Scotland.